Good evening, everybody. This is your host, Huge Pop from the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. We have a special guest tonight. He turned pro 6 weeks after his 18th birthday. He's best known from the World Wrestling Federation. They call him the Jobber. He guest wrestled Tony Atlas in Madison Square Garden. He's wrestled Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Bret Hart, to name a few. He wrestled The Undertaker. Welcome to the show, Mr. Mario Mancini. How you doing, my friend?
How are you, buddy? How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you for coming on the show. I
My
appreciate this.
pleasure. My
This might
pleasure.
be a different one. Yeah, he just got off a podcast. He's able to come on this podcast, so
I,
I
yeah.
appreciate that. You're a busy man, and this is like a career talking to your career, man. So let's get going. I would assume that you were a fan before you became a wrestler. So can you talk about what being a fan was like for you?
No, I miss it so much. I just said that recently. That I could never be a wrestling fan again. It's impossible, and I really miss that. Um, so I come from the era, probably around 1972, 73, when I was like 6 or 7 years old. My older brother introduced me to Bruno Sammartino on TV, and I was kind of hooked. And I was watching Bruno, I was watching Antonino Rocca, I was watching Argentina Apollo, Ernie Ladd, Ivan Putski, um, Dick the Bulldog Brower, Chief J Strongbow, who ended up becoming like a second father to me. Little did I know when I was 7 years old that that guy was going to be my mentor. Um, I was the Mighty Igor, Superstar Billy Graham, Gorilla Monsoon, Haystacks. So I was watching all these guys, the early '70s, mid '70s, and then by the late '70s, you had Bruno losing the belt, the superstar, and then Backlund taking the belt. By then, I was like 12 years old, and yeah, I just really, really loved professional wrestling. While guys were their heroes were Tony Dorsett or Terry Bradshaw or Reggie Jackson. For me, it was Bruno. So, and I always say it really freaks me out because not a lot of men, especially men, they have their childhood heroes, and like I don't know, maybe 90% of them never met them in their lives, and I actually had the privilege of being a friend of my childhood hero, which was Bruno. So it's pretty, when I think about it, it's pretty mind blowing that you look up at somebody when you're that young, and then you get older, and like, what, there's Bruno, and you actually become friends with him. Is pretty cool. But yeah, I was really into wrestling, and kind of like a today, kind of like a historian of it. Um, really going back to like Gotch and those guys even.
Yeah. So I normally ask this at the end, but what's you mentioned you don't watch you watch much wrestling, or is it hard to watch it?
I don't watch wrestling at all, which I get criticized because I own Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling School and Promotion. I teach on Monday and Tuesday nights. Roma teaches on Wednesdays and Saturdays. He's my partner in it, Paul Roma. And it's like, shouldn't you watch it? I mean, you're teaching it, shouldn't you? I go, listen, I have other pros in there with me, that joined the school 8 years ago that are on the independent circuit. They know the crazy stuff that these guys are doing these days. I'm here to give them the original old school foundation they need in order to do this crazy stuff. So I don't watch it. I shouldn't say that. I watched it for the first time in years. Because I wanted to see what kind of product they were going to put on Netflix. So I did watch that, but I didn't watch the whole thing. Um, so I don't really watch it a lot. I like, people drop names to me and I'll be like, yeah, no, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear a lot of that from the legends that I talk to. they don't care for the new product and whatever.
No.
It's not like back in the 70s and 80s when I was a kid watching WrestleMania 1, except
Mm.
man, I hated my best friend in high school because she had a big satellite dish and I didn't have it, and I had to watch that. I had to WrestleMania 1 like a couple months after when it came out on video VHS. So I was,
Yeah.
but that's when it was good. I mean, I, today's stuff, I watch it, but back in my day, it was when it was good. Um,
Yeah. The stories were better too.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so 18 years old when you got it. So talk about training. What was that like going to school, going to training?
Well, I went to, I started wrestling school in October of '83, which was a month after my senior year of high school started. So I was a senior in high school and I was going to wrestling school. Um, so I graduated June 20th from high school. The next day, the 21st, I turned 18. And then July 31st, because I was in wrestling school from October to July, Tony Altomar had taken me to the Poughkeepsie Mid Hudson Civic Center, and there I was looking at Greg Valentine across the ring at me, and I debuted that night in Poughkeepsie, New York, 6 weeks after I graduated high school.
Dang.
So,
Wow. So now, did you do any indie circuit, anything in the indies before?
yeah, it was a big mistake. A huge mistake. It was my baseball brain because baseball was really the first love of my life. But I have a really close friend, the brother of mine, called the Guardian of Chaos, Big Daddy. He always reminds me that who spent 40 years in the wrestling business himself. Who always reminds me of the mistake I made. So when I walked away in April of 1992, I should have immediately went on the independent circuit and just crushed it. But um, I had the wrong mentality and I made a mistake, and my brain equated myself playing for the Yankees, which when you're talking about the WWF, let's face it, they are the Yankees of the of professional wrestling. And now that I'm done with the Yankees, I'm going to slip back down to AAA. You know what I mean? And that got in my head, and I walked away from it. I just walked away from it, and the next call I got was in 7 years later in 1999. Said, "Hey, I want you to work for me in the Westchester County Center." I go, "Well, it won't be too good. I haven't worked in 7 years. Got a lot of kinks to work out there." And I said, I appreciate it, but I don't really want to do that. And I said, just out of curiosity, who was I working with? And he said, well, Bundy. And I was Chris's debut match in March of '85, and Chris and I are very close. So I said, okay, I'll make it. And Chris was a very good friend of mine. I cried like a baby when he died, but that was the next time I wrestled was '99. That was the first time since I got out of WWF. So
Wow. Wow. So yeah, you were. So the word jobber, is that a phrase you like? I mean, or enhancement talent?
or it's a phrase I love because you know enhancement talent makes me feel like a human Viagra. I you know for me, Elaine, George, Kramer, and Jerry are at the booth in the diner and they're doing their shtick. And way in the background at the corner of the diner is a guy with the white apron on going like this. To me, that's an enhancement talent. That's that he's just enhancing the scene. He's a background guy. He's just, and I like to think I was a little bit more than that.
Yeah. Well, I've been reading on you and on the you guys are more than that. You guys put these people over. You guys, I mean, Undertaker first match. I think it's his first match
Yeah.
at Survivor at SummerSlam or so. No,
No.
or was
So
that?
this is what happened. It was Tuesday or Wednesday, November 19th, 1990.
Mhm.
I was his first match. A couple days later was Thanksgiving. He made his live debut there.
Mm,
Since TV was taped, my match aired. I believe the date it actually aired was December 15th.
okay. Okay. So you mentioned Guardian of Chaos, Bundy. Who are some of your mentors breaking into the business and still today?
Strongbow.
Okay.
Uh,
So,
he
but
was my biggest influence. I think you know I had guys like Terry Garvin. Legitimately, he helped me a lot. Legitimately helped me a lot. Um, of course, my close friends. Roma. I'm closest to. We're going on 41 years now.
wow.
Guys like Tony Atlas, guys like Tito Santana, Demolition. Um, those guys, Valentine, the Honky Tonk Man, uh, Bobby Heenan, guys like that who cared. They cared to get to know me and to, talk to me and teach me. Guys like that. Bret Hart.
So now they all would be in the locker room, obviously. So how important is it for guys like you or even people growing up in the business to pay attention to what they're talking to you about in the back?
Well, it's not only that. I mean, the first piece of advice the night of July 31st of '84 when I met Strongbow. I said, Mr. Strongbow, what would you like to do? What would you like me to do? And he said, see that chair right there? I go, yeah. He goes, I need you to sit there and shut up and keep your mouth shut. So that's the first rule for me. If you're a guy going into a dressing room that's just starting out in the business, is just to sit there and keep your mouth shut. Listen, keep your eyes open, watch everything. Um, for me, I really had an advantage because whether it was TV or a house show, they'd have a monitor in a dressing room. So I would just pluck a chair right in front of there and just watch everything. That's the best way to learn. But there were a lot of guys back then that were willing to push you along and help you. They weren't like, "Hey, I'm not going to show this kid anything." They were gracious enough to teach me the business, especially guys like SD Jones. You know, I owe SD a lot. Fuji.
Yeah. So now, did you were you satisfied with just being the jobber, or were there?
Absolutely not.
Uh,
I remember my last match was in Huntsville, Alabama. A TV taping. It was Huntsville, Alabama against Rick Rude. And I knew when I walked away that night, I was never going to see that logo hanging in an arena again because I wasn't going back.
right.
I didn't want to go back. So I remember in the morning going to the airport. I got on the plane. I put my seatbelt on and I looked out the window and I just kind of chuckled to myself. And I said, "Well, that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go."
Yeah.
Yeah. So because I wanted to be the next Bruno Sammartino. So I ended up being the next Frank Williams. So it didn't work out that way.
So you were in the ring with Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior. What was it like in the ring with those guys? And did you learn anything?
Well, no, because when I was in the ring with the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan, it was mainly in battle royals.
Okay.
I never won one on one with them. Just like Andre the Giant, that would be in battle royals. But um, I was Bundy's debut match. I missed Savage's debut match um by one match. Um, one or two. I think it was one. So I was big Bully Busick's debut match, Hercules Hernandez, Demolition twice. Um, Once when Demolition first had Bill Eadie and Randy Colley, when they first debuted, I was in there. I believe it was with Salvatore Bellomo, which was another good friend of mine. And then when they got rid of Randy and Barry Darsow came in, I was the first Magic. So um, I was the Hart Foundation's debut match with SD Jones. Um, I worked with Big John Studd, Bundy, the Samoans, the Moondogs, Butch Reed, Terry Funk, Kamala. You know, I mean the list goes on. Ted DiBiase, I made the most TV appearances with, which kind of agitated Ted a little bit. He couldn't understand why they kept. He said to Pat Patterson, "People are going to think they're repeats." Um, Greg Valentine, Beefcake, Adrian Adonis, um, Harley Race, the Islanders, Haku. The list just goes. Any heel from 84 to 92, I mainly worked with. Chief wouldn't let me work with the Legion of Doom. He would not permit me to work with those guys because he said they hurt everybody they work with. So he wouldn't let me work. When I say I was like a son, I was like a son. He wouldn't let me work with them. But um, I worked with, I worked with a lot of people, a lot of good people, a lot of good people.
Well, you mentioned the Anawan family, the Samoans, like Alpha. So you're talking about Alpha Sika?
Yeah. Well, I've worked with Afa, Sika. I've worked with the Tonga Kid, um, Haku. Yeah, Afa and Sika. Afa taught me a lot. Afa, that's another guy I cried a couple months ago when he passed away because we called him Pops.
Yeah.
He was. Listen, he was it. Afa was it. You know what I mean? If you had a problem with psychology, or if you wanted to know how you did in the ring or what you could improve, you went to Afa.
Yeah. I've had several of his students on the podcast in the last 6, 8 months, and same thing. They said that that guy's the guy. Yeah, and he's gonna be missed forever. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
wow. And so that's cool because and next Wednesday I'm gonna have Samu on the podcast. So I'm
That's
excited to hear about.
cool.
I'm gonna
That's
hear.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
So what was your reaction, man, when you got the phone call that they want you to appear on WWF, and did it change your? Was it a life changer?
Oh, it was worse than that. So it was me, AJ Petrucci, Dave Barbie, and Seth Cohen, who worked as Robbie Parliament. And we all started wrestling school together. And Tony Altamar, who trained us, who was tag team partners with Lou Albano back in the 60s, they were the Sicilians. He said, "Listen, I'm going to take all you guys to TV taping today." He goes, "I have seats for you guys, and what we're going to do is we're going to work out in the WWF ring in the afternoon, and then you guys shower and you watch the show to see how all these pros work." And we went, "Okay." Well, that was a lie. So when we went into Poughkeepsie, we walked into the WWF and we sat ringside in an empty arena and we're talking to each other. And Tony Altamar comes walking up to all four of us. He goes, "Go downstairs and see Gorilla Monsoon. All you guys are working tonight." I went, "What? What?" He goes, "Go see Gorilla Monsoon. You're all working tonight." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And Tony Altomar did a real cruel thing to us. He kayfabed us hard because he said we're all friends in the ring, so we're sparring. We're just sparring with each other. But when we turn pro, when we become professional wrestlers, we have to apply this stuff. We have to fight for our lives. So now I go downstairs and Strongbow calls me up and and I look at the board and it says Valentine v. Mancini. And I went, um, Mr. Strongbow, you spelled my name wrong on the board. He goes, what? I said, he goes, you really think that matters? I go, it matters to me. He said, shut up. I said, okay. He goes, go talk to Valentine. And Tony Altomar's standing there. He goes, go talk to Valentine. I go, what am I going to go talk to him for? I'm wrestling him. And I'm going to beat him. I said, he's not going to get that figure four on me, Chief. I promise you that. Never. And he kind of glanced over at Tony Altomar. And Tony Altomar kind of gave him one of these. So he goes, go talk to Valentine. I go, I'm not talking to him. Is this a non-title match or a title match? Because Valentine was the Intercontinental Champion. And he looked over at Tony Altomar again. He's getting agitated. So Altomar put his arm around me and took we walked for a couple steps. He goes, do me a favor. Go and talk to Valentine. I went, okay. So I go walking up, I go, Craig Valentine. He goes, yeah. I said, Mario Mancini, I'm wrestling you. Not working with you. I'm wrestling you. Uh, how many matches have you had? I go, this is my first professional match. He went, oh, God. Who trained you? I go, Tony Altomar. He went, he goes, look, when I put that figure four on you, keep your legs real loose. Real loose. Because if you don't and you keep them stiff, you're going to hurt yourself. I'm not going to hurt you. You understand? I go, yeah. Do I get to do anything? He goes, oh, you want to come back? I go, yeah. He goes, yes. I go, now I'm crushed because I know it's all predetermined and I'm crushed. I'm
Right.
like, what can I do? He goes, after you submit to the figure four, get off the canvas and come back to the dressing room. And I went, that's my comeback? He goes, yeah. I go, okay. So we went out there, I worked with him like I worked with my brothers in the wrestling school. And I really didn't get to apply anything. And I kept my legs like a wet noodle. That could be found somewhere. Um, it could be found somewhere, but I sold the living daylights out of that figure four leg lock, and that was it. Then my second professional match was in August 9th, 1984, in the West Warwick Music Theater in Warwick, Rhode Island, and Dr. D. David Schultz broke my nose in two places. What a straight right.
Wow.
Welcome to the business.
I was going to ask that. So, all of this, is there any shoot stuff going on with? I mean, is there any? Did you ever get connected with any hit punches or anything like that? That because it's not all scripted, is it?
Not back then. No, no. That's one of the reasons why I don't watch it. You take another one of my mentors, big mentor for me, still is, still is. You take the Magnificent Morocco. Um, you give a guy like that a script and tell him if he deviates from any move in there, like he'll be fined or something, he'll crumple that paper up and throw it in your face and laugh at you and walk away. I mean, one the greatest promo ever cut in the history of professional wrestling is his promo prior to the steel cage match with Jimmy Snuka in 1983. That is the promo of all promos. And that's off the top of his head, and it was all off the top of their head. And when I wrestled, you got the finish and you got the time. So if I'm doing which I did wrestle Morocco in a house show, that was so much fun. Um, you got the time of the match. You guys are going 12 minutes, and I know Morocco had what turned out to be the tombstone. Right, he had a reverse pile driver. That was it, man. We go in there, freelance it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what you just go in there and freelance it.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. They don't do that up here now. I'm telling you.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Wow. So, can you share any interesting behind the scenes stories of your time in WWE or WWF?
What what's the subject?
Any like ribs and any stories like that?
Well, you listen in the dressing room, man. You especially around the British Bulldogs. You know, if you had a can of Diet Coke and you took a sip and you put it down and you walked away, you better get a new one. You know, the ribs back then were, H bombs, halcyons, would paralyze your brain, and you'd wake up and you'd have half a head of hair,
Wow.
half a mustache. They'd shave you. Um, there were a lot of ribs back then, man. There were a lot. There were a ton of ribs. Fuji padlock the loops of your pants. Put a padlock around every loop of your pants. You go take your pants on to put them on. You got a bunch of padlocks on them. That's if he likes you.
Like,
If he didn't like you, he would take a dump in your bag.
damn, damn. So I'm gonna name drop a couple names. I'll just here get your reactions. What's your thoughts on Ric Flair?
If Ric Flair just walked away and just went to wrestling conventions and stuff, I mean, even current days, like I got one more in me. Uh, there's one thing is if you haven't noticed, you know what I mean? I don't go around saying or expect anything because I'm Mario Mancini. Well, you're Mario Mancini. You're one of the carpenters. You're from, you know the golden age of wrestling. Everybody knows you. I go, okay. I go to Dunkin' Donuts drive-through. I order the coffee, and they go, that'll be $2.89. And I go up to the window to pay. She opens up the window, and I go, I'm Mario Mancini, former WWF wrestler. She goes, oh, good for you. That'll be 289.
Mm,
I don't do that. I don't live my life like that. Big deal. So what? So what, brother? I was one of the top 10 losers in professional wrestling history. Hey. I just don't live my life that way.
right.
And what Ric Flair needs to understand is he insults people because he expects things because he's Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Nobody cares that he's Ric Flair. And you know what? The longer this world goes on, uh, grab a grab a 23-year-old guy that's a mediocre wrestling fan and go, hey, remember the Magnificent Morocco? Go like, who?
Yeah.
So you know what? Pretty soon, the new wrestling fans coming to age, they're not going to know who Ric Flair is.
Yeah. Sure.
And you know what? They don't care who Ric Flair is. They only care who's in the ring right now. And guys like Flair, they can't let go. You got to let go. And it's not like I'm disrespecting him. I respect what he contributed to the business. And early on in his career, his wrestling ability and his character and his ability to draw,
Hmm.
I respect all of that. Later in his career, I think he became like a cookie cutter wrestler.
Hmm.
It was the same match every time.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But you know, for him to disrespect people because he's Ric Flair, um, or take his willie out and twirl it around because he's Ric Flair. It's not going to work today, man. It's just
No,
not going to work.
I'd seen his last match, and I was like, he should never have done that. That was in my opinion, that was an embarrassment. I would have been embarrassed. Same thing. I said the same thing when the Paul Tyson fight. Tyson should have never won in that fight, ever at
Listen,
all.
no, listen, man. Tyson and I were born the same year. Birthday. My birthday's June 21st. I think his birthday's June 30th. He was born like 9 days after me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be 59 June 21st. There are people that come up to me and go, man, would love to see you wrestle. I'm like, no,
I
no.
know.
Give me another name.
What was your I know you were in the ring with Piper and Savage at times. What was your thoughts on those two?
Well, Savage, I worked with quite often. Randy was a nice guy, intense. The question I get asked a lot is, can you name a wrestler in real life that was pretty close to his character? And that was him. He's always the winner.
Right.
Um, I liked Randy. That elbow knocked the wind out of me a couple times. That was unnecessary. I'd be laying on the canvas and I could see his rib cage coming toward my sternum, and I'm like, he's overshooting me. Um, Piper was one of my regrets. You know what I mean? I really wanted to work with Piper badly, badly. Um, but the only thing I got to do with Piper prior to me becoming pro, it's listen, I call this my Forrest Gump moments in professional wrestling,
All right.
right? So I joined a wrestling school, and you can watch it. I joined the wrestling school of October of '83. It's January '84. Altamar goes, "Hey, kid." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to?" He worked for Titan Sports. He worked for the WWF. He goes, "You want to take a ride to the Garden?" I go, "Okay." So now the Hulk takes the belt from the Iron Sheik.
Yep.
So Altamar taps me on the shoulder and he goes, "Come on, we got to go out there and get the Sheik." So I go out there with him to get the Iron Sheik to bring him back because he tried to go back in the ring and get Hogan. Hogan threw him out. So then we had to go out there and bring him back. So there I am in a leisure suit, 17 years old, 7 months before I turned pro.
Wow.
Right, wondering, knowing I have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning the next day to get up to go to school, and I'm walking the Iron Sheik back to the dressing room, right?
Nice.
And then he brought me back there to break up the fight for War to settle the score. I'm in the same leisure suit, holding back Roddy Piper from getting back into the ring. Those are my Forrest Gump moments.
Nice. Nice. So, who hit you the hardest, man? What was the move that you were like, oh shit, here we do. Let's do this.
Schultz hit me the hardest. He and I love him. I love him. I tell him I love him before I hang up with him.
Yeah.
Um, Schultz hit me the hardest. He broke my nose, and he did me a favor and broke my nose in two places. Savage hit hard. Terry Funk hit hard. Um, Neidhart hit hard. Um, Not a lot of guys did, but those guys did.
Awesome. So, looking back at your career, what were you most proud of in your career at WWF?
Probably the win I had in the New Haven Coliseum in front of 8,000 people.
Okay.
Um, Flying a reverse flying body press off the second rope. It was just a fluke. I lived in Connecticut. I lived 20 minutes from New Haven. Gino Carabello was living in Bridgeport. He moved from Long Island to Bridgeport. And I said, "Listen, man, you want to go to New Haven, goof around, laugh with the guys?" He goes, "Yeah." So I ended up getting there for call time, um, which was 6 o'clock. The show started at 8. And I walked in there, and Gino and I walked in there, and Arnold Skolin just put his hand on his head. And I said, "Arnie, what's wrong?" He said, Mario, they're all on the same plane and they're all going to be late.
Mm.
Get dressed. Okay. And he came up to me and he said, I need like maybe 30 minutes. I go, I could do that. I was 20 years old. So he goes, what do you have for a finish? I said, a reverse flying body press off the sack row. He goes, use it. I went, oh, okay. So probably that and working with Atlas in the garden. I did tag with Swede Hansen. Swede did the finish though, and he went over. I didn't do the finish. Swede did, but yeah, probably New Haven.
Okay. Now, would you say the Garden's your favorite place to wrestle?
Yeah, I would. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. Um, so memories of Barry Horowitz, and what's your friendship like with that guy?
I love Barry. I love that human being. He makes me laugh so hard. Um, he's a great guy. Underrated. They should have used him way differently. One of the best wrestlers I've ever seen. Way better than me in a Bret Hart kind of category. Um, Definitely didn't use him to his full potential. Should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Um, just an incredible athlete, incredible wrestler, incredible human being.
Awesome. So, if you could have one more match in the ring today, who would it be, and why, and where?
Dead or alive?
Dead or alive?
Roddy Piper, Madison Square Garden. Roddy Piper.
Wow, that'd be good. That'd be good. What advice would you give to aspiring wrestlers that would want to get into the business?
I do it all the time, every week. Every week. Um, because I own a wrestling school for the past 10 years. So I have tons of aspiring wrestlers getting into the business. And first, I go over how the business was when I broke into it and to let them know it's not like that anymore and contrast and compare the differences. And I tell them, you know, you have to look the part, which in my day, most of the times that meant you know 6'4", 275. It's not that way anymore. Um, they have to be in shape, extremely athletic. Um, I still give the same advice Chief gave me. You know, keep your mouth shut, your eyes and ears open. Don't start. And the Chief's favorite word was gaga. Don't start any gaga with anybody. You know, don't get that reputation. You know, if you get a booking and the place holds 60 people, and 2 months later you get a booking on the same day for a place that holds 3,000, you go in front of the 75 because you keep your first commitment. Don't get a bad reputation canceling your bookings for your own interest. Work. You want to be successful in this business? Work for the wrestling business.
Wow, that's balance. Yeah.
Put up the chairs, put up the ring, you know, help any way you can. Work for the wrestling business, not for yourself. Whether you're an ABC company or XYZ company, you're working for that company that night, not yourself. You're there to make that company better.
Yeah.
You know, when you start wrestling for yourself and you start believing your own hype, and it happens every day,
Wow.
and that it's almost impossible to get them out of it.
Wow. Now, would you say that's like paying your dues, get paying back?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I walked into a show in a hockey rink, my bag over my shoulder. Strongbow was at the entrance where we come out. The ring was going up. By then, I was, you know, I might have been 21 by then, 87. So at that point, I'm able to go in there and go, "What's up, Chief?"
Yeah.
You know, he he'd call he 28 years. He called me Mr. Mancini. Mr. Mancini,
Nice.
we're short on ring crew. Help them put up the ring. I said, Chief, ain't no ring crew. A pro wrestler. Grabbed me by the back of my hair and bent me back. Put me in front of his face and he goes, "Go put up the ring." I said, "I'll do it right now, Chief." Ran over there, dropped my bag, ran over there and helped them put up the ring.
Yeah. Wow. So is Brotherhood huge in the business?
I don't know about now, but it was pretty important back then. That's why there was such a separation between the boys in the office because of that. If you were close to the office, you got labeled a stooge,
Mm.
and your brotherhood was a little weak if you got tried to get close to the office. That brotherhood still exists, man. These days I go to a lot of wrestling conventions and sign autographs, and I see Demolition and Tito and Beefcake and Valentine and Jimmy Hart and Atlas. And, you know, you go up to Tito Santana and mention Mario Mancini, just start smiling. You know what I mean? Tony Gurria, you
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
great guy, gentleman. Known him for 41 years. I know all these guys now for 41 years,
Wow.
Um, I get sad when the convention's over and I tell hug each and every one of them. I go, please take care of yourself. Please, I'll be devastated if something happens to you. I'll be
Yeah.
devastated. Please take care of
Yeah.
yourself.
Wow. Absolutely. You ever get down to Florida to the River City Wrestling Convention?
No, I think Scott Wilder worked that. It might have been with Steve Kern. I was his debut match as Skinner.
Okay. All right.
He made me laugh so hard, man. I couldn't breathe. So you watch that match on YouTube. He absolutely annihilated me.
All right.
He beat me from pillar to post. So now we go out to eat after the wrestling convention and we're out in the parking lot, summertime. And he goes, "Hey, let's watch the match." So I pop it up on my phone and we're watching the match. And it's like three-quarters of the way through, and he's just kicking the living daylights out of me. And he goes, "Now I know why I like you so much." I go, "Why is that, Steve?" He goes, "Well, look, I gave you way too much to do in that match." And I just lost it. I just started laughing so hard. But God bless Steve Kern. Um he's just a first class person, first class human being. Loves God like I do, and he's just fantastic. Steve Kern's just fantastic.
Yeah. So fans, wrestling fans, how important are they to you guys? I know that's a dumb question, I'm sure. And have you ever had any interesting run-ins with fans?
Uh no, I mean I have a pretty good spirit, and I'm pretty good at making fun of myself. So I'll read some of the comments on my YouTube videos that somebody's posted. And the one I laughed the most at was, who can forget Mario Mancini with the porn stash and that pasty white skin?
Yeah.
um, no, I mean, not that I can recall. Um, not that I can recall.
Okay.
I mean, when I went to the Cayman Islands, SD brought me over there. He was the promoter over there. He brought me, Rocky Johnson, Tony Atlas, brought us all over the Cayman Islands, and I cut a promo as a heel, and they almost killed me. They were throwing bottles at me, and it was bad. It was bad. I cut a really mean promo for that. And if you want to count that as, I mean, I needed five cops around me,
Mm.
crouching down to walk back to the dressing room. It was bad.
Dang. So I heard this thing. I think you said it on a podcast that I was watching. Talk to me about you saying Mr. Fuji trained you.
Mr. Fuji trained Roma.
Okay.
What happened was this, and this is any aspiring pro wrestler, this is very important. So Tony Altomar trained me. He really didn't train Roma. I'd like to say Gino Carabello and I trained Roma.
Mhm.
And you don't know anything else. So one night I went over the top rope and I curled the top rope. I kind of rolled over the top rope onto the apron, then onto the floor. And I went back to the dressing room and Fuji said, "Kid, come here." Yes, Papa San, yes.
Yes.
Teach you how to go over the top rope like that. I said, Tony Alpine goes, wrong. It's wrong. So he looked at Rome. He said, show you the same thing? He goes, that's wrong. So the next night, he said, you get to the arena at 3 o'clock. So we got there at 3 o'clock and we went in the ring and he taught us how to go over the top through the middle. He started showing us all kinds of stuff. And then it became like a routine for a little bit. He went a lot farther with Roma because Roma started getting booked a lot more than me. So he got to spend a lot more time with Fuji.
Right.
So yeah, the Fuji had a hand in it. Yeah,
Okay. I know you know this guy. It's a good friend of mine, Rick Del Santo. What's up, Mario?
the professor.
The professor.
There's another first class guy, Rick Del Santo. You can't, I'm fortunate with Paradise Alley. I've had some bad people around me. Rick's laughing right now, but for the most part, I've had a lot of good people around me that contribute to the company. And Rick's a talented guy in a lot of ways in the wrestling business. He's a smart guy.
Mhm.
So I'm fortunate to have him as a part of my company.
Absolutely. He's a good guy, good friend of mine. How you doing, Rick, man? So outside of the wrestling, the WWF and your time is in there, let's talk about Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling to finish off the night. Talk about what's that about? What's it like? What are you guys doing in Connecticut? Correct?
Right. East Haven, Connecticut. Uh, Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling. Roma came up with the name. Actually, we tagged when we first opened 10 years ago. We tagged Stallone on Twitter with it, and because of my background going to law school and everything, I said we're going to get a cease and desist letter. So somebody tagged Stallone, and he said, "I see you guys took a page out of my book. Best of luck to you." I said, "Well, we're good to go then." We've been there for 10 years. And we've done a lot of charity work in the past for autism, for Mission 22. Uh, our military soldiers commit suicide every 22 minutes. Uh, Camp Rising Sun for sick kids. We've done a lot of charity work. We haven't done that much in the past couple of years because we need to keep the doors open. So we've had Richard Holiday was our very first student out of there. We have Brad Baylor that just signed an ID contract with the WWE. And we have a couple other guys that are doing extra work for WWE right now that looks like they have a good shot of getting signed. Um, but it's an independent pro wrestling company, just like the rest of them. The only thing is when you get to spend 8 years and Roma got to spend 9 years watching Strongbow and Patterson and Skolin and Vince, and we kind of like to follow in their footsteps as far as organization and running the company and shows. Um, it's said, and I like to knock on wood as I knock my phone down, that when our guys go to an independent show, there's a difference you see in talent. Um, so we teach them, when you come to Paradise Alley, you might not get the WWE way, but you get the WWF treatment. You get the WWF teachings in an inside and outside the ring.
Okay. Any up and coming female wrestlers? Any up and coming male wrestlers through the PAPW?
Well, like Brad Baylor, he's up and coming. I'm waiting for Holiday. Why the WWE didn't want him is beyond me. He's extremely talented. He's on the precipice of Ring of Honor. He's been talking to um, AEW a lot. They're kind of full right now, so he was told that he's probably going to get a spot on the Ring of Honor. Like I said, Baylor with the WWE. We have the Duke brothers that look the part. They're good athletes. They're carved out of stone. So guys that have that kind of head start with their bodies. We got a lot of good wrestlers, a lot of good characters, a lot of good heels. They just need to, their body just needs to catch up with their wrestling ability, and they can go somewhere. You know.
So talk about the big show this Saturday. What's happening at
Well,
PAPW?
we have New Year's resolution. Our second induction into the PAPW Hall of Fame. We're inducting some people. We had a first one a couple of years ago, but Brad Baylor will be at that show. You got probably the greatest tag team in independent pro wrestling, and in the past 10 years, it was the House of Pain. Another tag team that is going against them, that's starting to get that reputation, who's has 500 matches under their belt and have been all over this country, is Miracle Generation. Two very, very talented individuals. Um, we have them appearing, and hopefully it just be a really good show.
Now, where can people watch? Do they have to wait till after the show to watch it on YouTube channel or?
Actually, I'm not. It, you know what? I'll refer to the professor. If they want to watch it, you're gonna have to plug the professor because he's the one that'll be airing it.
So, Rick, man, I need an answer before Mr. Mancini goes. So, how do we watch PAPW on the internet?
PWZ.
PWZ, man. So, you mentioned you do it the Vince way. So, do you have any fond memories of Vince McMahon?
It's sad. I do. um, I do. I did Tuesday Night Titans. That was real. That was a lot of fun, and he was really loose in that atmosphere, and he was a lot of fun. Um, you know, I I've seen his attitude toward the business when he was younger, and I always got a kick out of it when I would say, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And he didn't want to talk to me, but he would, you know. Um, so he'd kind of give me that eye roll and go, "Yeah, Mario, what do you need?" You know what I mean? But he would talk to me.
Awesome. So, I appreciate the time that you spent with us on the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Thank you, Rick, for the professor for joining on the chat and filling us in. The best of luck to you this weekend with your show. I hope it goes over as big as it sounds like it's going to go over. Where can Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast fans get T-shirts, get anything merch wise? Where can we find you? What's the next convention you're going to?
Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling.com. WrestleCon in Las Vegas, where
Okay,
WrestleMania is going to be, and
okay,
I believe in April. Right after that, I'll be at a Wrestling 80s Con in Quebec, Canada in
okay,
June. I believe that's June 14th.
okay.
And I don't know how long it's going to last because sometimes Jimmy's not feeling that well, but Jimmy Powers will be with Roma in Vegas and in Quebec, and that's the reunion of the Young Stallions, and you don't see that often.
No, not at all.
So,
So I'm going to close the show. Don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you off camera real quick. So,
sure.
but thank you, Mr. Mancini, for joining the podcast. I love your stories. Props to you for putting all those guys over, man. You did the job you had to do, right?
Hence the name.
Hence the name. So, Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Thank you, Mario Mancini. As always, we say at Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast, it's Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast for life.